The massive holographic display aboard the Arcadian survey vessel, Eternal Seeker, cast a pale blue glow across Commander Ven's scaled features. Her six-fingered hand traced patterns in the air as she manipulated the three-dimensional image of Earth, a world that had puzzled the Arcadian Empire's finest minds for decades. "Explain it to me again," she commanded, her voice carrying the weight of centuries of imperial authority. The ship's quantum intelligence manifested beside her, taking the form of a shifting constellation of stars. "The contradictions persist, Commander," it responded, its voice like crystalline wind chimes. "Earth exhibits all the hallmarks of an advanced civilization: their energy usage, their atmospheric composition, their orbital debris patterns. Yet they maintain complete silence in the electromagnetic spectrum. No radio transmissions, no standard quantum packets, nothing." Ven's primary heart quickened its pace as she zoomed in on Earth's night side, watching the sprawling cities glitter like star fields. Her people had spent the last 300 years mapping and cataloging every sentient species in their sector of the galaxy. The Arcadian Empire prided itself on understanding, on knowing. This silence from Earth felt like an insult. "Show me the temporal comparison," she ordered. The hologram shifted, displaying Earth's development over the past century. The progression was unlike anything in the Imperial archives, a civilization that seemed to skip expected technological stages entirely. "They never established a proper radio communication network," the AI continued. "No microwave transmission arrays, no quantum beacons, yet their energy signature suggests technology far beyond mere radio waves." Ven's secondary hearts synchronized, a sign of deep concentration among her species. Could they have fallen, regressed? Negative. Their advancement continues on an exponential curve. They simply chose a different path. The commander's scaled skin rippled with irritation. The Arcadian Empire had guided dozens of young civilizations into the galactic community, teaching them the proper ways of development, the correct path to the stars. But humans had somehow found another way, an unknown way. "Prepare a first contact packet," she declared. "Standard diplomatic protocols." The AI's stellar form pulsed with concern. "Commander, the High Council specifically ordered observation only. Earth is designated as anomalous and potentially." "Potentially what?" Ven interrupted. "They're alone on their world, divided into nation-states, following a technological path we don't understand. The Empire's mandate is clear. We guide the young races. We teach them order." She expanded the hologram, highlighting the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. Mining operations were clearly visible, but they operated with a technological signature unlike anything in Imperial records. No fusion drives, no quantum tunneling. Something else entirely. "Deploy the contact probe," she commanded. "Let's see how they respond to a proper greeting from a proper civilization." The AI complied, though its stellar form dimmed slightly, the equivalent of a disapproving frown. A small probe detached from the Eternal Seeker, its quantum engines flaring as it accelerated toward Earth. The probe never reached its destination. One moment it existed, broadcasting its peaceful message in all known frequencies. The next moment it simply ceased to be. Not destroyed, not damaged. There was no debris, no energy discharge. It vanished as if it had never existed at all. Ven's three hearts stopped beating for a full second. "Analysis. Impossible to analyze what isn't there, Commander," the AI responded, its tone carrying a hint of what might have been fear. The probe didn't crash or explode. It was removed from space-time itself. The implication sent a shiver down Ven's reinforced spine. The Empire's probes were protected by the most advanced quantum shields known to galactic science. For humans to simply erase one from existence meant. A new signal appeared in the holographic display. Origin: Earth. It was being transmitted directly to the Eternal Seeker using methods that somehow bypassed every known law of physics. The message was simple, coded in perfect Imperial standard. Greetings, Commander Ven of the Arcadian Empire. We apologize for the destruction of your probe, but we prefer direct conversation to automated messages. Would you like to talk? Ven stared at the message, her 3 hearts now beating in a chaotic rhythm. The humans hadn't just been advancing along a different technological path. They had been watching, learning, understanding. They knew her name. They knew her language. They had probably known about the Empire for years, and they had chosen silence not out of ignorance or inability, but because they had something better than quantum communications, better than anything the Empire had achieved in 10,000 years of technological development. "Prepare my shuttle," she commanded, her voice barely a whisper, "and inform the High Council. Tell them we're not here to guide humanity into the galactic community." She paused, watching as more data streamed in, showing human achievements and capabilities that defied Imperial science. "We're here to learn from them." The A's stellar form brightened slightly. "And if the Council refuses to accept that humans might be more advanced than us in some ways." Ven thought of the probe, of how it had been erased from existence itself. She thought of a civilization that had chosen silence not out of weakness, but out of strength, a species that had found its own path to the stars. "Then may the eternal void help us all," she whispered, "because we're about to learn a very harsh lesson about pride." The Grand Council chamber of the Arcadian Empire sprawled across an artificial moon orbiting their homeworld, its crystalline walls designed to display the majesty of space itself. But today, the view was darkened as classified data streamed across the transparent surfaces, each new piece of information about Earth sending ripples of disquiet through the assembled council members. High Chancellor Xeris, his scales dulled with age and wisdom, watched the projection of Commander Ven's report with all 4 eyes fixed intently on the display. The chamber's usually perfect temperature felt uncomfortably cold as the implications of her discovery sank in. "You mean to tell us," he said, his voice carrying the weight of 10,000 years of Imperial history, "that these humans have developed technology that simply ignores our understanding of physics?" Ven's holographic form stood in the center of the chamber, her posture rigid with military precision. "Not ignores, High Chancellor. Transcends. Their achievements aren't magical. They're simply operating on principles we haven't discovered yet." "Impossible." Council member Drath slammed his ceremonial staff against the floor. "The Empire has spent millennia perfecting our understanding of the universe. These humans are barely out of their Stone Age." Ven's hologram shifted, displaying the recorded disappearance of the probe. The council chamber fell silent as they watched Imperial technology simply cease to exist. "The humans call it dimensional engineering," Ven explained. "They don't just manipulate space and time. They fold it, store it, reshape it according to laws we don't yet comprehend. And this is just what they're willing to show us." High Chancellor Xeris raised a hand, silencing the murmurs that had broken out among the council. "You've spoken with them directly." "Against protocol. They invited me to Earth, Excellence. What I saw there." Ven paused, choosing her words carefully. "Their cities aren't just built, they're grown. Their computers don't just process information. They weave it into the fabric of reality itself. They've achieved things we considered theoretical impossibilities, and they did it all while we thought they were primitive because they didn't use radio waves." The chamber's darkness was suddenly broken by a new hologram materializing in its center. A human figure, tall and dignified, wearing what appeared to be a simple gray suit. The council members recoiled, their defensive instincts firing at this unprecedented breach of their most secure facility. "Greetings, High Council of the Arcadian Empire," the human said, speaking perfect Imperial standard. "I am Ambassador Chen of the Earth Confluence. We apologize for this unusual entrance, but we thought it best to demonstrate our capabilities directly." High Chancellor Xeris rose from his throne, his ceremonial armor glinting in the starlight. "How dare you intrude upon—" "We dare," Chen interrupted smoothly, "because we must ensure there are no misunderstandings between us. Commander Ven's report is both accurate and incomplete. Earth has chosen isolation not out of fear or xenophobia, but out of concern for the natural development of younger civilizations, including, until recently, your own. The silence that followed was absolute. The implication that the mighty Arcadian Empire might be considered a younger civilization by anyone was shocking enough to override even their outrage at the intrusion. Your empire, Chen continued, has spent millennia guiding other species, teaching them to follow your path of development. It's an admirable goal, but one based on a limited understanding of reality's possibilities. We chose a different path, one that led us to discoveries your scientists would consider impossible. Ven stepped forward, her hologram intersecting with Chen's in a dance of light. High Chancellor, the humans aren't threatening us. They're offering to share their knowledge. And why would they do that? Council Member Drath demanded. What do they want in return? Chen smiled, the expression somehow both warm and mysterious. We want what we've always wanted, peaceful coexistence and the advancement of all sentient life. But we also want something more specific, change. The ambassador's hologram expanded, showing images of countless worlds under Arcadian rule, all developing along the same technological path, all following the same patterns. Your empire's greatest strength, its unity of purpose and development, is also its greatest weakness, Chen explained. You've become so convinced of your way being the only way that you've stopped looking for alternatives. We're offering you the chance to learn those alternatives. High Chancellor Xeris sank back into his throne, his age showing more prominently than ever. And if we refuse, if we decide that your technology is too dangerous to exist outside Imperial control. The ambassador's smile faded. The hologram shifted, showing Earth's solar system. Scattered throughout it were points of light that hadn't been there before, millions of them, each one representing technology the Arcadians couldn't even begin to understand. Then you would learn, Chen said quietly, why we chose silence for so long. Not out of weakness, but because we understood something your empire has forgotten. True power doesn't need to announce itself. True civilization doesn't need to impose its will on others. The points of light pulsed once, and every quantum sensor in the Arcadian Empire went dark for precisely 1 second. When they came back online, the message was clear. Humanity could shut down Imperial technology at will. The choice is yours, Chen concluded. We can be your greatest teachers or your worst nightmare. We'd strongly prefer the former. As the human's hologram faded, High Chancellor Xeris looked at Commander Ven with all 4 eyes wide. You've seen their capabilities firsthand. What do you recommend? Ven's hologram straightened to attention. Excellence for the first time in our history. We encountered a civilization that doesn't need our guidance. One that could teach us instead. I recommend we listen. The council chamber remained dark, as the implications settled over them like a heavy cloak. The Arcadian Empire stood at a crossroads, facing a choice between pride and progress, between the comfort of superiority and the challenge of learning anew. The stars watched in silence, waiting for their decision. The Arcadian Empire's response came 3 days later in the form of 1,000 warships emerging from quantum space at the edge of the solar system. The massive fleet, each vessel bristling with weapons that could crack planets, formed a perfect attack sphere around Earth's orbital plane. It was the largest military force the Empire had assembled in 5 centuries. In her office atop the Singapore Spire, which stretched well into the mesosphere, Director Sarah Chen watched the fleet's arrival through windows that weren't really windows at all, but rather apertures in space-time that could show her anything in the solar system. She sipped her tea, unperturbed by the display of military might. They chose pride, she said softly, speaking to seemingly empty air. The quantum intelligence that permeated Earth's infrastructure responded by materializing as a subtle shimmer in the air. As predicted by the social models, it confirmed, the Arcadian cultural framework cannot easily accommodate a shift from teacher to student. Their response is, unfortunately, logical. Chen set down her cup, the motion triggering a cascade of holographic displays, showing the Arcadian fleet from every conceivable angle. The ships were beautiful in their way, all crystalline angles and geometric precision. 1,000 years of imperial engineering had produced vessels that were very nearly perfect, for the level of physics they understood. "Status of the bubble network?" she asked. "Ready," the AI responded, "though I still believe a more gradual demonstration might be more psychologically appropriate." Chen smiled. Sometimes the kindest teacher is the one who shatters illusions quickly rather than letting them persist. "Signal the Arcadian flagship. Let's give them one last chance to choose wisdom over pride." Aboard the Imperial dreadnought Eternal Dominion, Fleet Admiral Corks watched his tactical display with all 4 eyes narrowed in concentration. The humans had made no move to defend themselves. No ships had launched. No weapons had appeared. Their orbital installations, primitive things by Imperial standards, continued their slow dance around the planet as if 1,000 warships weren't poised to strike. "Final status report," he commanded. "All ships in attack formation, Admiral," his executive officer responded. "Quantum shields at maximum. Gravitic weapons primed. We await only your word to begin the demonstration of Imperial power." Corks nodded, his scales shifting color slightly with anticipation. "Send the demand. Full surrender and technological submission to Imperial authority, or we demonstrate why the Empire has ruled the stars for 10,000 years." The message was sent. The response was immediate. A human voice, calm and almost amused, echoed through the bridge. "This is Director Chen of the Earth Confluence. We received your demand. Since you seem to require a practical lesson in why humanity chose silence, we will provide one. Please observe carefully. This demonstration will not be repeated." Corks began to issue orders, but before he could speak, reality shifted. There was no other way to describe it. Space itself seemed to fold around his fleet like origami in the hands of a master. Ships that had been kilometers apart suddenly found themselves occupying the same relative position in space-time, yet somehow not colliding. The laws of physics bent themselves into pretzels as normal space transformed into something else entirely. "What's happening?" Corks demanded, watching as his perfect military formation dissolved into geometric impossibilities. "Unknown, Admiral." His science officer's voice was edged with panic. "Our sensors indicate we're simultaneously in normal space and somewhere else. Some kind of dimensional overlay that doesn't match any known physical model." On every ship in the fleet, crews watched in horror as the stars around them multiplied, divided, and rearranged themselves into patterns that hurt the mind to observe. It was as if reality itself had decided to demonstrate just how little they truly understood about the universe. Then, just as suddenly, everything snapped back to normal. The fleet reformed into its original attack sphere, every ship exactly where it had been before. But there was one crucial difference. None of their weapons would respond to commands. Not a single quantum shield would activate. "Imperial fleet." Chen's voice returned, still irritatingly calm. "We have temporarily adjusted the dimensional frequency of your weapon systems and shields. They are undamaged, but will remain inoperable for the next 24 hours. This is not an attack, merely a demonstration of the gap between our understanding of reality and yours." In the Singapore Spire, Chen watched the Arcadian fleet's confusion with a mixture of sympathy and resignation. "Show them the final piece," she instructed the quantum eye. Every screen and display on every Arcadian ship suddenly activated, showing the same image, a complete technical breakdown of how humanity had just manipulated the fundamental forces of reality itself. The mathematics involved were far beyond imperial science, the concepts almost incomprehensible to their current understanding of physics. "This is a basic primer in dimensional engineering," Chen's voice explained. "Consider it a first lesson, freely given. You'll note that we're not only showing you what we did, but teaching you how to counter it. This is not the act of an enemy, Admiral Corks, but of a potential mentor." The silence that followed was profound. On 1,000 ships, Arcadian crews stared at equations that promised to revolutionize their understanding of the universe. The Empire had come to teach, only to be taught instead. Pride warred with curiosity, tradition with opportunity. Admiral Corks found his voice at last. You could have simply destroyed us. Yes, Chen agreed. Instead, we chose to educate you. The question now, Admiral, is whether your empire is ready to learn. Your weapons will reactivate in 24 hours. What you do then will determine whether humanity becomes your greatest ally in understanding the universe or your most patient enemy. She turned away from the dimensional windows, leaving the Arcadian fleet to their deliberations. Sometimes, she said to the quantum eye, the best way to prevent a war is to make it unthinkable. The eye's shimmer pulsed in what might have been agreement. And sometimes the best way to teach is to demonstrate just how much there is left to learn. The stars watched in silence as humanity's message sank in. There are some powers that don't need to be displayed until absolutely necessary, and some civilizations that choose silence not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. In the great archive halls of the Imperial Academy on Arcadia Prime, Commander Venn stood before a gathering of the Empire's most brilliant minds. The crystalline walls, once symbols of Arcadian technological supremacy, now seemed almost primitive compared to the holographic displays showing Earth's dimensional engineering principles. Everything we thought we knew about physics, she addressed the assembled scientists, is not wrong, but incomplete. The humans didn't break the laws of reality. They simply understood them at a deeper level than we imagined possible. The vast chamber buzzed with excited discussion as thousands of the Empire's leading researchers pored over the data Earth had shared. The demonstration in space had shattered more than just their military confidence. It had cracked open the very foundations of their scientific understanding. Professor Kelax, his scales shimmering with intellectual excitement, manipulated a complex equation in the air before him. "It's beautiful," he whispered. "Their mathematics doesn't contradict our quantum mechanics. It encompasses them, shows them to be special cases of a much larger framework." "How did we miss this?" "Because we stopped looking," Venn replied, her voice carrying across the suddenly quiet hall. "We became so convinced of our superiority that we forgot the first principle of science. There is always more to learn." High above the archive halls, in the orbital command center of the Imperial fleet, Admiral Corks faced a different kind of revelation. His tactical officers had spent days analyzing the human demonstration, and each new discovery only deepened their astonishment. "They could have annihilated us at any time," his chief strategist reported, her voice still shaking slightly. "The dimensional overlay they used. It could just as easily have scattered our atoms across 1,000 universes. Instead, they used it to teach us about our own limitations." Cork stared at the replay of the demonstration, watching again as space itself folded around his ships. "Not our limitations," he corrected, "our potential. They showed us not what we can't do, but what we could learn to do." Meanwhile, on Earth, Director Chen was conducting a very different kind of meeting. The Singapore Spire's observation deck had been transformed into a reception area where dozens of Arcadian diplomats mingled with human scientists. The scene would have been unthinkable just days ago. "Your dimensional engineering?" an Arcadian physicist asked, her scales shifting through patterns of academic curiosity. "It requires a complete restructuring of our understanding of space-time, doesn't it?" Chen nodded, gesturing to a nearby window. The view shifted, showing not the city below but the structure of reality itself. Layers upon layers of dimensional frequencies, each one holding different possibilities. "Your civilization mastered quantum mechanics, gravitic engineering, faster than light travel. All impressive achievements. We simply chose to look deeper, to ask what exists between the spaces we can see. And you're truly willing to share this knowledge." The physicist's secondary hearts beat faster with excitement. "Even after we threatened you." "Especially after you threatened us," Chen smiled. "You proved something important, that even in your pride, you're capable of learning." Your fleet could have attacked the moment their weapons reactivated. Instead, you chose to listen. The quantum AI materialized beside them, its shimmer taking on a more defined form for the benefit of their guests. The social models show a 97% probability of successful integration between our civilizations now. The demonstration achieved its primary objective: cultural shock sufficient to overcome institutional inertia without triggering defensive regression. An Arcadian diplomat, overhearing this, fluttered his throat scales in amusement. You calculated even our psychological response. Of course, Chen replied. Just as you study younger civilizations before making contact, we studied you. The difference is, we waited until we could teach rather than simply guide. Back in the archive halls, Commander Ven received an urgent communication from the High Council. The message was brief but historic. The Empire formally requests teaching status from Earth in dimensional engineering and associated technologies. Let it be recorded that we choose to become students again. Ven smiled as she read the message. The Empire that had prided itself on being the teacher of younger races had found the humility to become a student once more. It was perhaps their greatest achievement. Send the humans our response, High Chancellor Xeris commanded from the council chamber. Tell them we are ready to learn. As the message was transmitted, observation posts throughout the galaxy recorded an unusual phenomenon. The silent areas of space, the regions where advanced civilizations had chosen to cease broadcasting, began showing signs of activity. Earth hadn't been alone in its silent advancement. Other species had made the same choice, waiting for the right moment to emerge. The galaxy was about to become a much more interesting place. The age of simple quantum mechanics and radio waves was ending. The age of dimensional engineering, of humanity's physics, was about to begin. And in the Singapore Spire, Director Chen raised a glass with her Arcadian guests. To the future, she toasted, and to the wisdom of knowing that there is always more to learn. The stars watched, no longer silent witnesses, but active participants in a new age of discovery. The Empire had made its choice, and the universe itself seemed to approve. 5 years after the demonstration that changed the galaxy, the Singapore Spire hosted another historic gathering. This time, representatives from 50 advanced civilizations converged in its dimensional spaces, species that, like humanity, had chosen silence and scientific advancement over broadcasting their presence to the stars. Commander Ven, now serving as the Arcadian Empire's chief scientific liaison to Earth, stood at a window that overlooked not just Singapore, but simultaneous views of a dozen worlds across the galaxy. The dimensional viewing technology that had once seemed like magic to her was now a daily tool of her work. Remarkable how much can change in 5 years, a familiar voice said behind her. Director Chen approached, her aging gracefully masked by subtle dimensional engineering that the Arcadians were only beginning to understand. The Empire's oldest universities are teaching principles that would have been considered heretical a decade ago, Ven replied, her scales shifting in patterns of pride and humility. Our youngest scientists are already proposing applications of dimensional theory that surprise even your experts. As it should be, Chen smiled. The best students often surpass their teachers. The gathering today marked more than just diplomatic relations. It was the inauguration of the Galactic Scientific Coalition, a new organization dedicated to sharing knowledge across species and civilizations. The Silent Ones, as they had come to be known, were finally speaking, not with radio waves or quantum signals, but with the very language of reality itself. In orbit above Earth, the former Imperial dreadnought Eternal Dominion hung in space, now transformed into a mobile research platform. Admiral Quarks, who had chosen to remain its commander, supervised a joint human-Arcadian team studying the boundaries between dimensions. The weapon mounts that had once threatened Earth now housed sensors capable of peering into the deepest structures of the universe. New contact, sir, his sensor officer reported. Another silent civilization revealing itself. This one from the Carina arm. Quarks nodded, no longer surprised by such discoveries. Since the Empire's transformation had begun, more and more advanced species had emerged from their self-imposed isolation. Each brought new perspectives, new applications of dimensional science that expanded the collective knowledge of all. Back in the Singapore Spire, the quantum AI manifested in its now familiar shimmer, joining Chen and Ven at the dimensional window. The latest social models are exceeding all optimal projections, it reported. The integration of technologies and cultures has accelerated our understanding of the universe by several orders of magnitude. And to think, Ven mused, we once believed we were coming to teach Earth how to join galactic civilization. Chen's expression grew thoughtful. Perhaps that belief was necessary. Sometimes we must reach the peak of our confidence before we can truly learn humility. The dimensional window shifted, showing the Arcadian homeworld. The crystalline cities that had once been the Empire's pride were now interwoven with human dimensional engineering, creating spaces that existed simultaneously in multiple realities. Students from 100 worlds walked its streets, learning and teaching in equal measure. The younger races are watching, Ven noted. Those still in their radio age, still broadcasting to the stars. They see our achievements and wonder why we chose silence. And when they're ready, Chen replied, we'll teach them what we learned. That true advancement comes not from shouting our achievements to the cosmos, but from the quiet pursuit of knowledge. The gathering in the spire reached its climax as representatives from each civilization shared their unique insights into the nature of reality. Theories were proposed and tested in real time. Dimensional spaces were folded and unfolded like cosmic origami, and the boundaries of known physics were pushed ever further. High Chancellor Ixeris, attending via dimensional projection from Arcadia Prime, addressed the assembly. His once proud imperial regalia had been replaced with the simpler robes of a scholar. 5 years ago, our empire stood at a crossroads between pride and wisdom. Today, we stand at the beginning of a new age, not as teachers or students, but as fellow explorers in the greatest scientific endeavor our galaxy has ever known. The quantum AI shimmer pulsed with what might have been satisfaction. The probability of another civilization choosing military confrontation over cooperation has dropped to nearly zero. The demonstration of dimensional engineering's possibilities has fundamentally altered the development path of all observed species. Not through force, Chen added, but through the simple act of showing what's possible. As the gathering concluded, Ven found herself back at the dimensional window, watching the stars. Stars that were no longer silent, but singing with the harmonies of civilizations working together to understand the deepest mysteries of existence. What do you think we'll discover next? She asked Chen. The director smiled, gesturing at the window. Reality shifted, showing layers upon layers of unexplored dimensions, each holding new possibilities, new mysteries, new frontiers to explore. That's the beauty of true science, Commander. The moment we think we know everything is the moment we stop looking. And there is always, always more to find. The stars sparkled with new meaning now, their light carrying not just radiation and particles, but the combined wisdom of civilizations that had learned perhaps the greatest lesson of all, that the quietest voices often have the most to teach. In the depths of space, countless young civilizations looked up at those same stars, broadcasting their presence, eager to join the galactic community. They would learn in time, as humanity and the Arcadians had learned, that true power doesn't need to announce itself.